Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Engine for another episode of RPG Corner. In this episode we'll be taking a look at Bastion. Now Bastion is an indie action RPG developed by Supergiant Games and published by Warner Brothers Interactive. Bastion was released back in 2011 for PC and Xbox Live Arcade, and then released a year later on iOS. And upon its release, it received mass critical acclaim, rave reviews, and as of March 2013, it has sold over 1.7 million copies across all platforms, plus winning several awards. So in Bastion, you take the role of the Kid. Now, the Kid wakes up suddenly in the aftermath of an event called the Calamity, which is a catastrophic event that suddenly fractured the city of Salonia and basically broke the world into floating islands, floating pieces, causing mass devastation, and basically all its people have turned to ash. Now, as I say, the game begins when the Kid awakes, and he then makes his way to the Bastion, which is a safe place for everyone to gather in times of trouble. However, he only meets one person there, which is an elderly stranger who happens to be the game's narrator. Now, the elderly stranger tells him to go out to all the different fractured islands of the world and collect the power cores that once powered Salonia. So the game itself looks fantastic. It's hand-painted landscapes, great looking effects, and it runs at a solid 60 frames per second. The actual music is just as good as the visual quality. Its musical score is fantastic, it's with really well produced songs varying from really deep, moody, atmospheric kind of ambient sounds to real twangs of a country western kind of theme. And it really adds to the game and the kind of atmosphere, and it also really adds well to the combat as well. Now, where Bastion really stands out is in its storytelling and gameplay, and its ability to combine the two. The game is narrated throughout by the elderly stranger, whose identity you'll find out later on, and the narrator will talk at specific story points, but also comment and react to what you're doing and how well you are doing. So, for example, there was a point in a boss where I didn't do particularly well, and the narrator commented on how it was a tough fight. Another time I was just messing around and just doing a load of dodge rolls, just in a circle because I was just messing around, and then the voice acting, basically the narration commented on how I was doing a number of somersaults for no particular reason. Some of the actual narration is quite funny and really has some really good, well voice acted comedy elements to it. What the best thing about this is that it makes the story flow really well without having to stop and start to provide a lot of text information. The game really reacts to what you're doing, and for example, there's various story points that you can miss. So if you miss a certain item, you might miss that particular narration on that part of the story or that bit of lore. And the interactivity between the story and the gameplay is a real revelation and a joy in the game. Instead of having to stop and start and getting lines of text thrown at you, the story really does progress seamlessly while you play, and it really does add that element of interactivity in an RPG that is sometimes very rarely seen in this day and age. Now, in terms of the gameplay, it's very similar to your traditional ARPGs in the fact that what you are given is basically slots. In Bastion, you are given 2 weapon slots, a melee slot, a range slot, and you are also given a 3rd slot, which is a special ability slot. Now, there are a number of upgradable weapons and numerous abilities to use in the game, and as such you can customise your loadout, and depending on which weapon, melee weapon, range weapon and special ability you want, you can upgrade them as well. Now, the combat itself is very skill-based, leaving very little to chance and providing you with the means to use a shield and dodge effectively. Enemy and boss types are varied and well placed, providing a suitable challenge. Now, the RPG elements come into play via the Bastion, which is almost your base. You can build various buildings like an armory to upgrade your equipment. One building in particular, which is really important, is the distillery, in which every time you gain a level, you gain a slot in the distillery to drink a potion, which provides a permanent statistical change to be put on your character. Now, this can be more health, plus 10 crit chance if you've got full health, etc, etc, etc. So, you can customize that in that respect. Bastion also does away with the traditional easy, normal and hard modes. Instead of, while you're playing the game, you can make use of a shrine, and what the shrine does is the kid can pray at the shrine and basically gain favour or denounce various gods, which can add a particular enemy modifier to the game. For example, the enemies become faster or something like that. And what that basically does is it can make the game harder, and the more modifiers you put in, and the more in terms of the harder in difficulty you make the game, the more the game rewards you in terms of things like experience and rewards. So it is really in your favour to do put some enemy modifiers in there, and there is some quite funny and quite challenging ones in there thrown in for good measure. Now, one thing I do want to state is that the game was designed for the use of a Xbox 360 controller. Now, the PC port also supports a keyboard and mouse and a controller, and they do the PC port is a really good job. What you're actually seeing now is the PC port. I'm using a Xbox 360 controller though. I've tried the mouse and keyboard and they do work well enough, but the advantages of a joystick makes a lot easier. It's a lot easier to play the game and easier to do the harder moments and the harder challenges if you do have joysticks. So I definitely would recommend playing the game with a controller if you do have the option. All in all, Bastion is an absolute gem in the indie market. The fact that it was developed by only 7 people is all the more impressive, and just goes to show that you don't need teams of people to create an absolutely wonderful story and a compelling game. I certainly would recommend it if you haven't played it or you haven't picked it up, to pick it up. It is relatively cheap now, and you can get it on Steam if you're a PC user. You can get it on Steam in things like Steam sales for really, really cheap, and it is totally worth your time. You're looking at an average of roughly around 6 to 10 hours to play it right through. There is replayability in there as well. And if you enjoy your action RPGs, and you enjoy a real good story and a really fantastic, I think it's one of the best presented stories I've seen in an indie game ever. I don't think I've ever seen a better presented story. It is one of those that it will really take your breath away. It is a fantastically presented game and definitely worth a look. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Do like and leave a comment and hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time.